You've been searching for the best way to generate passive income in your life and heard that real estate is a great way to do it. But you're tired of all the so-called gurus who are all talk and no substance. Get ready to celebrate because Kevin Buck has spent 14 years successfully making it happen. This is the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Now, here's Kevin Buck.
Hey guys, Kevin Buck here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. Now, our guest for this week's show is Chairman and CEO of Post-Harvest Technologies and Growers Ice Company, Dr. Jim White. Now, Dr. White is a serial real estate entrepreneur and author of Opportunity Investing, How to Revitalize Urban and Rural Communities with Opportunity Funds. He achieved international recognition as CEO of Blount World Trade Corporation and owner of Managing Director of ACEC Centrifugal Pumps, Nevada, Belgium. Now, throughout his career, he has bought, expanded, and sold 23 real estate companies operating in 44 different countries. Now, here's what you're going to learn today on our show. You're going to learn the opportunity in the little-known niche of pre-cooling, cold storage, and processing facilities. You'll learn about the vital role that these facilities play in the food supply chain. You'll learn about the many opportunities that exist in this sector as a result of the antiquated business practices and outdated processes that exist. You'll learn how to identify investment opportunities within qualified opportunity zones. You're also going to learn how do qualified opportunity zones not only help the wealthy investors, but also play a critical role in gentrifying poor communities. We're also going to talk about various other real estate sectors where Jim feels that there are ripe opportunities abound and much, much more. And so with that, guys, I'm super excited to get onto the show with Dr. White. But before we do it, just have a few quick housekeeping items. First and foremost, guys, just want to remind you of the partnership program that we recently launched called Bring Kevin a Deal. And this is where I will pay you as much as $200,000 for any mobile home park or parking lot deal that is referred to me that I end up buying. To learn more about this opportunity and to also download my deal acquisition criteria guide, simply go to the website, bringkevinadeal.com. Again, that's bringkevinadeal.com. Moving on here, if you love what we're doing here at the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast, please, if you haven't done so already, subscribe. But also, if you feel like we've added value to you and your business on a regular basis, please take a moment to leave a rating and review for the show. And moving on here, guys, I want to remind you of the free 30-minute phone call that I offer each and every Friday. This is where I set aside 30 minutes to connect with my listeners. And so if you haven't done so already and you'd like to connect, you can go to my website, kevinbuck.com, and get signed up for a free call with me. And I won't try to pitch anything. This isn't a sales tactic. It's just a way for me to connect with you. And so I look forward to speaking with you and the opportunity to maybe help you along in your real estate investing journey. And so now, guys, without further ado, I'd like to get on to the part of the show that you've been waiting for, which is our interview with Dr. Jim White. So here we go. All righty, guys, it is my honor to introduce my guest for today's show, Chairman and CEO of Post-Harvest Technologies and Growers Ice Company, Dr. Jim White. Jim, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm wonderful, Kevin. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Couldn't be better. You know, the sun is shining. It's a nice warm day here in South Florida, and just enjoying life. So things are good. And I know that we had a brief conversation before we got rolling here that you're taking a little bit of a break with your wife to get away from the hectic nature that we're living in today. And you're spending your time right now up in Lake Placid, I believe, correct?
Lake Placid, New York.
Yes.
First time,
yes.
And what a beautiful area it is. And it's our homes in Greenwich, Connecticut, in addition to Scottsdale and Carmel area where all of our business is located, as we discussed. So we're sitting here in this beautiful lodge, and in preparation for your show, my wife was helping me move the computer around, get the right angle so we could get prepared. So we're looking forward to the next 2 or 3 days, and I had you on the calendar, and I was looking forward to that. And once this is done, all the computers are going away, and my wife, I know my wife doesn't believe it. My phone's
yeah. That's good. You know, truly shutting down for a couple of days is incredibly healthy, and it's challenging to do, but it feels really good when you can do it and when you actually execute on that plan. So I hope you follow through with it. I'm sure you will. She'll make sure of it, right?
I do so.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Well, Jim, again, pleasure having you here. Appreciate you taking time out of your vacation to come join us here today. And so, what I'd love to do is, kind of pass it back to you for the first couple of minutes. And for the folks that aren't familiar with you, maybe haven't read your book, that don't know too much about you, your background, your companies, what have you, maybe take a few minutes and just tell us a little bit more about yourself and what it is you do.
Well, I often start when people ask me that question, and I said, after you have as many decades as I do, and I'm 71 years old going on 28, so there's a lot of decades to explain. So long story short is when I got out of the Army, I went to work for Ingersoll Rand Company, of people familiar with Ingersoll Rand. Mm-hmm. And I was very blessed, grew very rapidly through the organization, went in an international group. I was in Saudi Arabia for 3 years and became Ingersoll Rand's Middle Eastern manager. And that was my first foray into understanding what money really was, being a poor Southern boy. Absolutely poorer and poorer and poorer for his family, and the opportunity to be able to see what the American dream was like. And I got promoted to Vice President of Construction and Mining Group and worldwide for Ingersoll Rand, and woke up one day, had no debt, making a lot of money, woke up and said, I'm absolutely miserable. And how could that be, right, when you think you have accumulated the things? And so I ended up resigning Ingersoll Rand and started my first business in Washington, D.C. Didn't know what to call it, so we called ourselves a consultant. Well, I'm not sure that was a good word, but anyway, that's what we were. And so I started doing project financing, started looking at projects around the world, specifically in third world countries, viewing that I could go to areas that was high risk, high reward. And so we did that. We picked up a lot of projects in Nigeria, Venezuela, Ivory Coast. What were the projects? They were agriculture related projects. They were port facility projects. And we worked with World Bank, USAID, how to put those projects together, and sold that my first company to a group out of Montgomery, Alabama, called Blunt Construction Company, and I became CEO of Blunt World Trade, and for 2 years under contract, and that was up. Then I started buying companies. I ended up buying 23 in 10 years.
Wow.
All walks of life. I really don't care what the industry is. If you got people associated with it, there's always an opportunity. I don't care what the culture is. And so I ended up buying companies. The last one I really bought that was a love of mine was a pump manufacturing company in Belgium, and called ACP. And we had 33% of the OPEC market, 100 years old. I acquired it from a company, kind of the Westinghouse of Europe, if you will, ASAT Union Miniere. I was part of their nuclear powered group, and we spun it off. And I took it to just under $800 million in 7.5 years and sold it in 1991. And decided I was going to retire. Well, that lasted 24 hours, and moved to Carmel, California. Started getting requests from people around the world. How did you do this deal, White? What did you see? What was the value proposition? How did you do all of that? And then I woke up and I said, well, I got another business in the making. So I started J.L. White International, which was a consulting company, and grew it. I had 167 consultants worldwide, focusing on companies that were somewhat in trouble, looking to grow. And we had to do our magic. We had a process that we would teach. And when I turned 65, decided to start slowing down, and that lasted just a short period of time as well. And so the current involvement that I have is a company that I'd met one of the principals and the family members in 1997, and as we were sharing before we got on air, the fourth generation in Salinas, California. They were a farmer, owned 10,000 acres, what's called the Sally Bow in Salinas, California, and had a cold storage facility and a pre-cooling, which I know we'll dig more into that as we go through. But there's two processes, the pre-cooling and cold storage facility. And Like I said, it was fourth generation, and it was very toxic. I was asked if I would come and see what we could do to get everybody to be more civil to each other, and that's an opportunity, especially in where you got a little greed that kicks in, as you well know. That does occur when you get money involved. So I took over the companies in 2016, actually in January of 2017. Looked at it, never been in this side of the business before, but I found it fascinating. It was an asset class that's been overlooked, if you will. There's been not much innovation from a technology side, especially what we call the pre-cooling side of the post-harvest side of the business. And so we're now in our fourth year, and we are absolutely it's been a whirlwind. It's been nonstop for the past 4 years, 24/7, and which leading into some of the more things we're going to talk about, qualified opportunity funds and zones. So that was a fast 50-year review.
Yeah, it sounds like we need a couple of days to unpack all that, but we're going to try to hone in on focus on what you got going here the last 4 years there with the right. Pre-cooling and cold storage. So appreciate that background though, and that insight into your history and just a wealth of knowledge that you carry with you. And so, it sounds like the project in Salinas, which we are gonna dive into, the pre-cooling cold storage project in Salinas that you've been involved in for the past 4 years. It almost sounds like it was much more of at least initially, much more of a business play from your perspective. It just happened to have real estate attached to it. Would you agree with that statement?
I would agree with that.
Okay.
It was a business perspective with real estate associated with it. Mm-hmm. And then I started looking at the opportunities that they both provide, if you will. So, yes.
Okay, fantastic. So let's dive into the business itself. For the folks that don't know, the food business, the food industry, which is basically right. What this is related to. What is a pre-cooling cold storage and processing facility? Exactly, what part of the food chain does it encompass?
Yeah. It kicks in what's called post-harvest. Okay. You have the growing side. So you got the farmers, what's referred to as the grower shippers. So you got the farmers, they go out here and farm thousands of acres. Well, when that crop is ready to leave the land, it needs its next journey, goes to a facility, and it's referred to pre-cooling. Well, what is pre-cooling? Pre-cooling is designed to remove the heat from the product itself. And depending on the product, there's many methodologies to do that. So you bring the product in, it goes through primarily what we call a vacuum tube. That's a big chamber. It has ammonia. You got an assortion of extract and just heat exchange for simplified, just moving the heat out and then making sure that you have the right amount of moisture in that product. Then once it's completed the pre-cooling stage, then it goes into a temperature controlled warehouse or a cooler. It is inventoried, and then it stays there. In our case, in Salinas, we're the largest commercial cooler in the nation, and that is significant. We represent 85 different brands that we contract with that will bring their product to us. Last year, we handled 34 million cartons of lettuce, for example, just coming through the campus. And so that product is retained in our coolers and until it's ready to ship. So then we come and trucks, just before we went on air, I got a report. We have 700 trucks right now on our campus in Salinas waiting to be loaded for product to ship all around the nation and to come to the grocery stores. So that's where you go in and you use another word, which was the government called value add or manufacturing. You go into your grocery store and you see the bagged lettuce, right? All the different bags and all the combination. Well, we have that on our campus as well. So you come in and you put a bit of this and a bit of this and a bit of this, and you put it in a bag, and then you store it and it ships. So that's the combination. So the pre-cooling, you got the value add side of the business, and then you got the cold storage and the logistics associated with that, which is huge.
Are there specific regions of the country that cater to being hubs for this type of business, the pre-cooling, cold storage, and processing function?
There is. Okay. There is. Salinas Valley is the number one hub in the nation for as leafy vegetables, if you will, or green vegetables. The other hub is in Yuma, Arizona. There are sections in Mexico as well. There are sections of Texas, but Salinas, California is the largest. Salinas Valley supplies over 70% of all the lettuce that is grown in the nation and shipped around the world today. So we're in the hub. And like I said, we've been in that hub and was one of the founders prior to my time. It started in 1936. The term iceberg lettuce, if you will. Well, that was coined on our campus. That was in the early days in the 20s and the 30s when they would grow block ice, right? The old block ice, and you put ice on railroad tracks, railroad cars, and then ship it across the nation. So we have that brand. So it's fascinating history.
Very interesting. Now that's a great piece of history you got there. What type of impacts have you seen, per the facility itself, due to COVID? I'm thinking, my mind's kind of turning related to, the closures of restaurants, and the lower demand for milk products, food products, what have you, any type of food product, whatever. Has there been some type of backlag or, jam up per se, like within your industry, or does that not necessarily affect you because it never makes it to you if there's not an ultimate demand on the other side?
It does affect us, and it's to say the restaurant, the school, that's what we refer to as the service side of the business. That's down this season by 40%, if you will, that side. Then you have the other side is like the food that's going to, say, grocery stores themselves. Say, I don't want to be careful with brand names here. Any major brand that you would want to go into in the grocery store. It's really interesting. That side of the business is up during this COVID-19 period. So it's right now we're looking at the numbers and they're kind of washing, they're kind of balancing a little bit. And of course, during the COVID, we fall in that critical industry status as well. So it's interesting. And of course, the restaurants, the schools, those poor people are just being devastated during this time. And, but we're making it up, if you will, in the grocery store aisle, if you will, side.
Got it. I want to talk about the historical stability of this particular asset class. And obviously, before you dove into this opportunity, you went through feasibility studies, did your due diligence, what have you. What do the historical trends actually look like as far as this asset class is concerned? Have there been hiccups in history? What have those hiccups been? Kind of what are on the risk reward spectrum? Would you mind sharing that with us if you could?
Happy to. What a great question, Kevin. Historically, from a commercial cooler standpoint, pre-cooling and cooling, that side, there was some hiccups in, say, 2008, 2009 in that area. And that was primarily because most of the cooler operations were small operations, if you will. And then you have major brands, which I don't mind giving a brand, major brands such as Taylor Farms, for example, which owns Earthbound Farms. Those brands, they have their own pre-cooling operations that they do. And at the same time, they contract with our firm to be able to augment because they don't have enough capacity, if you will. So that asset class has been very solid for years and years and years. What hasn't occurred is investment back into the properties. It's just a trend throughout the nation. Majority of the facilities are 40 or 50 years old. So from the value add, I look at it and I said, there's a tremendous opportunity here, especially from a food safety perspective. And then what I call from a food security perspective, because that's another whole issue within Excel. So the trends is going forward. It's probably one of the most solid industrial asset classes that you can have been involved in, and especially when you start looking at e-commerce, which that's another segment, but we do some of that as well, for the fulfillment centers and those type of things for the major brands.
Interesting. So is there, you made a mention, I think yours is the largest campus. Is it in Salinas or the largest campus in the country?
It's one of the largest commercial. There are larger facilities in space, but when we mean by commercial, there's very few individuals. Say you are a young farmer up and coming. And maybe I inherited, say, 10,000 acres from my grandfather, and I'm a good grower, but I do not have the ability to go invest $200 million in building a pre-cooling and a cooling operation. So I got to contract with someone to manage that. Mm-hmm. That's our role. That's what we've done. From that standpoint, that is where we feel that void for a lot of these farmers, where they don't have the capital to do it. We do.
Got it. Okay, fantastic. Now I want to talk a little bit more about this asset class, but I want to switch gears for a moment, and then we'll come back to it. And I want to talk to opportunity zones. As we had mentioned in the beginning, this was first and foremost a business opportunity, but it just happened to have real estate attached to it, and that's where the opportunity zone opportunity really comes into play. And so just for those that are listening, that don't know what an opportunity zone is, just real quick, I'll give a short definition, and please, Jim, feel free to add to it or elaborate if you could. But opportunity zones are essentially economically distressed communities that were designated underneath the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to essentially encourage private investors such as Jim and companies like ours to deploy capital back into these distressed areas and improve them. And along with that, comes certain tax advantages for the investor side. So folks like Jim and I. And so would you agree with that statement, Jim, as far as the definition there?
Excellent definition.
Yeah. And the one question that I have for you, if you wouldn't mind answering as we get into the conversation around opportunity zones. This is a question that I've asked many different times on the show to other folks that I've had on regarding the topic of opportunity zones. This might not specifically pertain to the opportunity zone you're located in, but I still would love your perspective and your answer behind it, if you wouldn't mind, because you've studied the opportunity zones for quite some time, I'm assuming. We can already agree that qualified opportunity zones they're already a benefit to investors such as ourselves, because we don't have to pay taxes, right? There's a lot of huge tax benefits behind it, but is an opportunity zone guaranteed to actually help these poor or distressed communities? Or is it just a maybe, that it actually might be helpful to these different communities? What are your thoughts on that?
First, your question is excellent, and it's one that I'm very passionate about. Mm-hmm. You have these opportunities. Again, I'm going to play on words here a little bit. It's not my intent, but initially when the December 2017 Act came about, the legislation started to uncode. Treasury started to release rules, if you will, guidelines. And we could talk about weeks about that, which we're not going to do at the moment. But the initial play was from the big real estate investors that were going in and say, hey, we're just going to take a play. Here's a parcel that happens to be an opportunity zone. And it's not going to do much for the community, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not going to do much. My view, and I've been advocating since the beginning of December 2017, we as investors, we can do better. We have an opportunity from the tax advantages you said, Kevin. We also have an opportunity to go into these rural and urban communities and actually create jobs. We can actually do some benefit and still meet the returns that our investors are looking for. Mm-hmm. to me, it's a big. So I am always looking. If you're not bringing me a project, if I'm not looking at a project that I cannot count, touch, and look at, that I am going to impact the community, I'm not interested in that project. I'm not interested, because that's what the initiative is all about. And there's 8,800 zones, as you well know, certified, and there's 35 million Americans that live in those zones. And then we have the additional unemployment that we're facing right now. So those numbers are going to swell, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. There's $6.6 trillion unrealized capital gains sitting on the sidelines. And the investments that you and your firm do and investment we're looking for, we as a private sector investment group can do more good than any other government program, in my opinion, that's out there. So as you can tell, you see my voice escalated there. I'm very passionate.
It's great. I appreciate that. And, I know that there's time constraints that also go along with, with these qualified opportunity zones. How is that played? And I know that you guys have probably other opportunities that you're looking at purchasing, what have you, that might be in qualified zones. But how are you, or how are other folks that are investing in these types of areas dealing with potential delays as a result of COVID, right? I mean, things have really slowed down. People are kind of putting the brakes on. It's someone used the analogy the other day. I thought it was a fantastic one. It's like when you're driving down the highway going 70 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden you hit a block of fog on the road, where your visibility goes down to 20%. Do you continue driving 70 miles an hour? Now, some folks might answer that they do continue driving 70 miles an hour. Those are the crazy ones you want to stay away from. But the majority will slow down. They'll slow down, look around, try to make sure that they're safe distance away from the other vehicles until they can figure out exactly, what this new environment that they're in is in, right? And so I thought that was a good relation to where we're at with this pandemic, as far as the slowing down a little bit, watching the volatility, figuring out where the stabilization or some incentive of stabilization might come into the picture here. And what are you guys doing to deal with these various delays? And I know that there's actually been some extensions put into place, what have you, but I'd love to hear your perspective on it if you could.
Well, and I will take the latter. As you said, there has been some extensions that have been put in place for his deployment of capital, so that's helpful. We're also a PhD Opportunity Fund. We're coalition members of an organization called Economic Innovation Group, which you're probably familiar with. Mm-hmm. Economic Innovation Group and works very closely with one of the sponsors of the original bill, Cory Booker and Tim Scott, both senators, both sides of the aisle. And for us, we're not blindly going down the highway in the fog, in that analogy, and going full steam ahead. But we have enough projects that we can deploy. And if you are just now coming in and looking at an opportunity, say if that project is not quite ready, then it could be a challenge. That's really important that we continue to work with Treasury to say we can't stop. We got to get some extensions. We got to get developers an opportunity to continue to deploy. So so it's not affecting us right now, and it's not affecting projects that we're looking at. We were already well along before the unfortunate COVID-19 occurred, but the different projects we're looking at ones that we can actually impact. New projects, we got to continue to work with Treasury to get those extensions right now.
The different projects that you're actually looking at, are they in the same sector, in the pre-cooling, cooling, and processing space?
They are.
Okay.
We have other, some verticals, some acquisitions. As I said, that a lot of the cold storage facilities, pre-cooling, they're 50 years old. So we're looking at making some acquisitions and vertical acquisitions to be able to renovate those and upgrade them. The pre-cooling equipment itself has not seen any technology improvement. So we have a R&D sector that we're invested in to R&D and research to build more equipment. We're actually have a leasing company that we're building equipment from and putting in a leasing company to make it a little bit more attractive for the folks that cannot afford that capital equipment. So we're doing it from many different directions.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I want to dive in and dissect a little bit the project there in Salinas. So, we've kind of touched on it a little bit here and there. And I know that the opportunity going into that was, and you just mentioned it again about the antiquated nature of the, operations, generally speaking, as it pertains to this particular industry, and that there was a lot of opportunity to bring technology in, probably some automations, what have you. And so would you mind sharing some specifics on, some of those improvements that you've made thus far over the last 4 years that have helped, create more efficient operations, improve the margins, what have you, but just what were some of those value add components, if you would?
Yeah. The one that immediately comes to mind is what we call our ice generation and ice distribution system. A lot of produce will have ice. If you go to, you'll see a box and you'll see ice inside of it. You see ice on top of say a box of lettuce. For 50 years, ice was made and it was stored on concrete pads. And you used bobcats to take the ice and put it in what's called ice injectors. We designed a new system with technology, a lot of technology associated with it, and simplified. You got a portable ice generator on a 53-foot trailer, can produce 200 tons of ice in 24 hours. We can bring that to a facility. We can connect it. We make the ice. We can bring that ice into an ice storage unit, and this is where it gets really interesting, and I know you're going to really appreciate this, and that's called all of the utility, the power. You can imagine the power it takes to generate all of this ice. Well, what was happening for years, people were making ice. They were having it on a concrete pad. The ice was melting, running off into industrial waste, and then you're going to make the same ice again. I said, come on. I looked at it. It was driving me nuts. We can do better here. Stop paying our utility company millions of dollars a year to make the same ice over and over and over. So as simple as it sounds, we created that, and that's been one of the innovations that we've done. So we got the PLCs, computers, if you will. Now what we have a control system. You got the box that we call it. It's a refrigerated box. You fill it up. It's 35 tons or 70,000 pounds of ice that you can start during the shift. And, that ice box can be full before the shift arrives, and you can produce the ice in all peak time. So you're taking advantage of less price per kilowatt hour in order to generate that. So those are the things that we've looked at. Pretty basic, but in our industry, it's like, geez, you guys are brilliant for what you're doing here, right? And I will take it because it's one of the things that we're doing. And the ROI and our customers are looking at us like, wow. So that's one of the things we're doing. And I'm very proud of that one. And we have other technologies that we're taking, just building off stuff that's been solid as a rock, but just putting some different technologies and using PLCs, controls, controlling cost, and controlling labor.
Fantastic. No, that's brilliant. And are these different technologies that you guys are, obviously you got the R&D side of things that are helping develop some of these technologies that are creating a more efficient operation. Are you patenting these technologies and then offering them to other facilities throughout the country, or is this staying internal at this point in time?
We are patented, and this is the uniqueness and what I'm most proud of our team. We don't only have, like I said, our own operations, but I have a separate company called Growers Custom Equipment. Growers Custom Equipment is owned by Post Harvest Technologies as a standalone company, but we're in the manufacturing business. We're in the R&D business. We're making equipment and we're selling it to a competitor. We'll sell it to a competitor, if you will, because it's so capital intensive. So we got a whole arm. We're selling the product around the world, around the nation.
Got it. Now, the reason why I asked that question is kind of a loaded question because I know that you're looking for other potential acquisition opportunities. However, if you go in and fix all these potential future acquisitions before you have the ability to purchase, then you've eliminated some of the value add yourself. But however, you still have another profitable arm of the business by selling them the technology. So I guess
we do, and I've always looked at that, and some of my staff look at me and say, "Boss, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, we can do both." Yes. I believe that we can figure out a way, if we're smart enough, we can do both. Mm-hmm. And if the people we're looking at can beat us in our own game, bless you.
Yes.
Go ahead and do it. So I don't worry about that kind of that kind of stuff.
I agree. The scarcity mentality, it's surely not there's not much of a place for it in business. And no. You can lead that horse to water, but you can't necessarily force that horse to drink the water. And although you might sell that technology to a supposed competitor or a future potential acquisition on your part, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to utilize that technology in the best manner, nor have the best business practices around the rest of the company. So, yeah, again, it was kind of a loaded question, and but wonderful answer. So I appreciate that. So you're also a published author. I don't know how you have the extra time on your hands, but you've also found the time to write a book. I have yet to finish my first book. I'm about 20% away from completion, but it's been, an 8-month project going on 2.5 years. And so you beat me to the punch on that one, but I'd love to chat about that for a second. There's a couple, I haven't read the book, just as a disclaimer here. I have not read the book. However, I did find a few brief summaries online, a few, bullet points pertaining to the topics that are covered in the book. And so the book itself is called Opportunity Investing, and, how to revitalize urban and rural communities with opportunity funds. And, one of the interesting topics, Jim, that I saw kind of outlined that's covered in the book is, overlooked areas and asset classes that might be ripe for opportunity zone investing. And if you would, I'd love for you maybe to elaborate on that and share some of the ones that you think might be ripe for the picking.
Yes. As I stated early part of the show, when the QOZ initiative, and we refer to Qualified Opportunity Zone Initiative, first came out, it was real estate forward looking. And I'm looking at it and said, we got many other asset classes. I'm first going to mind car washes. We have an opportunity, believe it or not, hair salons. You got a building that happens to be there you can invest in. You got movie theaters. You got bowling alleys. You've got garages. You've got car washes. You've got it just goes on and on and on. And also you got opportunities to create new businesses within there, the startups, the technologies, the think tanks, the innovation centers. This is the reason I wrote the book, and I said, man, we're missing so many opportunities here. It's just don't look at this one class that we all know. And if we can get momentum in the smaller asset classes that actually will give a return, and I say that to everybody. Mm-hmm. Okay, you don't bring me a business plan. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. I don't care what the tax advantage is, right? It's got to make sense.
Sure.
So if it makes sense, there's just tremendous, and that's one of the things that we're enjoying within Salinas, in the Salinas Valley. And another thing that we believe in is nonprofit participation. We have a nonprofit that we support. It's at risk, Teens at Risk. We had a judge that started the program, the Superior Court judge. So what a concept. Versus putting all these kids in jail, why don't we look at another way to help rehab them? Well, they got this beautiful facility. Now we got an educational center. We're teaching them how to weld. We're teaching them, refrigeration. We're teaching them. So there's a lot of things that's coming out of that. Oh, by the way, you've done that. You want to start up a new business. You want to start a business. Oh, guess what? Go over here. Here's an opportunity zone. If you could do this, you continue to do, we can have a fund that's going to invest to support you in that. So that's the side that's where it really is going to help the community create jobs and do what the initiative's intended to do, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. You made a point there in the very beginning of your answer that I want to just make sure that we hit on there is just because it's in an opportunity zone does not mean it's an opportunity. I think that's a little bit of the misconception that folks have that have not invested in a property that exists within a qualified opportunity zone. And so just because it's there does not mean the business still has to make sense itself. Whatever the business is that you're buying has to make sense and kind of stand on its own per se. So just want to make sure that we point that out. So you've gone down the road of actually, creating an opportunity zone fund. And so what, any advice that you might be willing to share? Because obviously you've had probably some hiccups along the way, some barriers that you've had to cross through or push through. Any advice that you would share with the listeners that might consider going down the same path?
Absolutely. The advice I would give is do what you do best. Don't go outside of what you know right now. Mm-hmm. But go, any one of your listeners, what they could do, we have a map on our website. You can go to that map and you can put in your address and see if you're in an opportunity zone, number one. If you're in an opportunity zone and you're looking to grow, there's not a better vehicle, in my opinion, than the funds, the creation of a fund. And that can be expensive within itself. You got all the compliance to things to do there. We have been coaching a lot of funds for startup. We have, through my legal team, we have created some packages. We don't have to make it difficult. So we're offering that assistance to people. If they call, we'll give it to you, right? We'll help you get started, because the more that we can get people involved, well, the more you can start helping these communities. That's what we're here to do at the end of the day.
That's fantastic. And they can learn more about that on your website, correct?
Can.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Jim, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming here and spending time with us here today. And again, you've taken time out of your vacation with your wife, so very much appreciated. And is there anything else that, we've covered a lot of ground here today. We've kind of, ducked and weaved on a few different topics, but is there anything else that you feel we might have missed that is of extreme relevance as it relates to opportunity zone investing or, the niche that you guys are focused in at present, which is pre-cooling, cooling, and processing? Is there anything, just a major thing that we just might have glossed over by accident?
I think there's one area, if I may, and that's infrastructure development. Mm-hmm. The infrastructure in the United States has fallen apart. That's an area and opportunity zones and funds that people are not paying much attention to it. We are. There's not a better and a faster way to put people back to work than have some infrastructure projects ready to move. Infrastructure, roads, bridges, dams, sewage systems. So that is an initiative that we are really strong on, talking to every congressman that will listen to us, to say that we've got to pass a infrastructure bill, and then saying to our investor colleagues, I know this may be out of your asset class, but just take a look here how we can do a public partnership as well, and infrastructure development. And then another thing that we need to continue to do is to educate our local city and state governments and economic development departments, because this is foreign language to most of them right now.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Has it fallen on deaf ears? Have you actually gained some traction with some of these conversations that you've had regarding the infrastructure?
I would like to say that we're gaining traction. It's not fast enough from my liking, but we are getting more traction. There are different associations that we're putting a lot of energy behind it anyway. It's going to be interesting to see what the next administration looks like, regardless of what that administration is, because we have got to get an infrastructure bill in place, and because we got to put people to work. Mm-hmm. So with the combination of that, combination of the QOZs and the QOLs, we have an opportunity, and you and I, as investors, as business people, we can be a big part of that solution versus just relying on Washington to solve all the problems.
Yeah, as we know, isn't really the solution, right?
It is not.
Well, fantastic, Jim. Again, this has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate you coming here. And folks, again, to learn more about Jim and the services he provides, more about his opportunity fund, you can go to his website, which is phtopportunityfund.com. Again, that's phtopportunityfund.com, and I'll be sure to put that in the show notes as well. And so, Jim, that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure having you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, guys, that's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Buck, wishing you huge success. You guys take care.
Congratulations! Now you've got more of the best tricks of the trade in building massive amounts of passive income from real estate. For more amazing resources, visit realestateinvestingforcashflow.com. We'll see you next Monday morning.